Biz School is brought to you by Neon Canvas. Neon Canvas is a digital marketing boutique located in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about Neon Canvas, visit neoncanvas.com.
Welcome. Here it goes. This is the 8th episode of Biz School with Alex Rasmussen. I'm going to be teaching you all things business. And today we're going to be joined by a former member of the U.S. ski team and ski instructor, Troy Watts. We're also going to talk about what it takes to build a great team and how to get individual excellence out of each member of your team. So on this episode, we're going to discuss how to build a team from selection through retention, how to get the best out of each individual, how to create and maintain a great culture, and how to identify leaders and empower them to be successful. When I was writing the business plan for Neon Canvas, I envisioned having this large team full of talented people who were considered to be the best in their craft. And I knew that I was going to need a great culture in order to attract that talent that I was really wanting, that I envisioned to be on our team. So I looked at my past experience as an employee and I thought about all the things that I disliked. That's where I started building a great culture, was thinking about the things I didn't like. So right from the start, I decided I was not going to make anyone do something that I hated doing myself. I would never ask any of our employees to do anything that I'm not willing to do. I'm not a morning person, so we don't start work at 8 o'clock or even 7 o'clock here at Neon Canvas. I think, family comes first. And so I don't ask my employees to take personal time off to pick up their kids from school or take them to a doctor's appointment. If a kid's sick and home from school, work from home. If you're not as productive that day as you were maybe the day before, that's okay. Make up for it the next day. Basically, this idea is that I was going to treat my team like humans. And in turn, what I've noticed is our team is always willing to go above and beyond to be productive and get their job done. There's 168 hours in a week, and I'm only asking for 40 of them. Not all businesses and industries can afford the luxuries that my team has, but when you simply look at the ways that you feel value and you give those to your team, you're going to see a huge ROI. Look for new and creative solutions to guide you away from the things that you hated in your past experiences, and incorporate your team into those decision-making activities. You don't want to get into this idea that people are going to leave for more money or for a better title. People leave jobs because they don't feel valued. So that's what you have to focus on as a leader, is creating that value for your team. So with that, I want to bring on a guy who is one of the best in the world at building teams full of talented individuals and creating a winning culture around them, allowing them to thrive. Troy Watts was born in Texas and moved to Breckenridge, Colorado at age 7. He grew up in the mountains, and Troy gained a passion for snow skiing. That talent led him to the U.S. ski team, where he was once regarded as the great American hope, before a broken leg, and that injury derailed his professional career. But afterwards, Troy got into coaching, where he has taught some of the greatest young skiing talents in the United States. And Troy also is a ski instructor. So you personally, you and your family could go learn to ski from Troy, which is incredible. It's how my family learned to ski. So let's bring Troy in, ask him to start his video here. There he is. Hey, Troy, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited we've got you on here. You and I guess, met kind of through divine intervention. We were looking for a ski instructor, and in walks this smiling face, and we're trying to get booted up. And I don't know if you ever tried to get, ski boots on 3 little kids, but it's a mess. And Troy's just like, it's all good. We'll get out there when we get out there. I'm going to help you get your boots fixed up, help you get everybody get settled away. And before we even hit the slopes and left the room, we felt like Troy was like a part of the family. And his ability to kind of set everybody at ease, and make the experience enjoyable is one of the things that drew me to Troy so early on. And I knew I had a lot to learn from him. So welcome, Troy. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Let's start with your story of your ski career from youth to coaching. Tell us how you got where you got.
All right. And first of all, if I'd known you weren't a morning person then, I wouldn't have, like, people, when they show up for a lesson, I know before I even meet them that they probably, if they're first timers or teaching their kids to be first timers, they're going to be a little wrecked after, it's like an Apollo moonshot logistically. And then, a lot of times when they're, private lessons are not inexpensive. So if they're running an hour or two late, there's that immediate parent stress, like, oh, the stand is running through the hourglass. They're stressed out. But y'all fell quickly into the way I wanted it to. We went in, as you say, went into the ski shop, and that actually was an opportunity when it wasn't cold. Kids don't always engage well when there's environmental stuff going on. So I was like, take that advantage, I think. And one of my favorite Instagram pictures I ever posted was just me sitting there with your family. And I've got a nice Zen expression on my face, and your kids are posed really well. I don't know if they're trained that way, but they're just good at it. And, that was just a great beginning to what ended up being a really good time for me, as well as y'all, I guess. So the question, and I will divert onto tangents, as you know, but
I love it.
I moved here from Texas when I was 7 years old, hadn't really seen snow at all. And I was very undersized, probably the smallest person in my grade. I think I came up here in second grade, and but terrific body control and a willpower born of the insecurity that the smallest kid in the class is going to have. So as soon as skiing happened, I knew there was something in that for me, and that was, I guess you could say, divine intervention, because throughout my life, that thread has carried me through professionally, personally, with family, emotionally, intellectually. There's just so many things that spin off of it, and I meet terrific people. And again, it always seems pretty serendipitous when I end up in front of someone on skis. So if there is a purpose that I have, that feels like I'm living it. Fortunately, some days are better than others. You guys were like a 10. I usually try and keep it at an 8 or better. So I first race I ever did, because when you're a kid, you think the world's full of rules and it's subjective and it's not fair. But boy, when I went through a race course and got a time measured in seconds and hundredths of a second, even when I was 10 years old, it felt like, okay, I own that. For better or worse, I can take responsibility for whatever happened or didn't happen between that starting line and the finish I. And for whatever reason, that resonated hugely with me. And it had all the elements I needed to pursue it. And pretty early on, I think I was watching the Olympics in 1976. I decided that I was going to be on the U.S. ski team, race internationally, and there was no stopping me, right? And when you realize at 12 years old, you over time, and I teach this now to kids who are taking on the sport early, it's not enough to want to change circumstances. Your thoughts actually have to change around that goal, and as a bit of foreshadowing for what the topic of what you do well is, having a culture all aligned, not just by what they do and say, but, those thoughts tend to resonate with one another and it becomes a very powerful thing. And the alchemy is art and science, as you know.
Yeah, and I mean it's two things there that really resonate with me. One, which is it seems like all of your great leaders, and I have lots of leaders just on my team. So you just don't have to have one leader in an organization, but these people tend to have a common trait, which is they love for the pressure to be on them. They love for the outcome to be decided by their actions. I love working with people like that, right? Because you don't have to hold them accountable. They're going to hold themselves accountable. And then in turn, you're able to unleash the power in this person, right? Because you're not micromanaging them. You're not telling them how to do everything that they need to do. You're just, which is what I love about you. It's just a little thing. Like you'll say, let me watch you for a second. And it's just a little subtle thing. Hey, you're leaning a little bit the wrong way, or your head, you're tilting it, you're tilting your face out to the wrong direction. You need to keep your head in the center. And that little subtle thing can make all the difference between somebody falling all the way down the mountain or having the day of their life on the mountain. And so it's really incredible to me when you think about how great cultures are built by the sum of all parts. Yes, but those each individual matters so much, because if you've got an individual within that culture, I guess they say the bad apple spoils the bunch. That can truly happen. So you really need everybody to be at their greatest. And your job as a leader, our job as leaders, at the top of all those leaders, is just to find the little subtle things that you can see that they don't have insight to.
There's I'm sure a coach told me this once, but it's kind of a convoluted a sentence grammatically, but it's uh, let your athlete or your student see you seeing them at their best. Sometimes you'll have to unpack that one, but they need, if how can you call yourself a coach or a leader if you don't have that ability to reflect someone's better self back to them? Because I've learned, especially with kids, all you need to do is show them what they're capable of, or imply it, or create an environment where it's bound to come out. And then, you know, I'm not a out front type of leader. I tend to like leading from behind. Um, and I think I told you early on that I was a reformed introvert. So that fits very well with me. You want to talk terrifying, the type of lesson that ski instructors that I've worked with generally struggle with in terms of mastery is that family lesson where everyone's a beginner, or the kids are and the parents aren't. And there's so many awesome dynamics to manage. And success to me is kind of letting it happen organically, but having that light hand and being a facilitator more than a director. I personally think I have an advantage, an unfair advantage over, say, a business leader, because I've got this group of people, an environment I'm familiar with that has real risk in it. So the likelihood that they're going to listen to me is a lot higher. The difficult part is you get the hand you get, and you're trying to make all those parts work together. And, being a family man myself, which is one of the first things I liked about you, giving me that awesome responsibility working with your kids, which caused me to bring my best game out. Just when you have that experience as a family, that's something that all of you will probably carry for a long time to come. And, that makes me feel pretty awesome, and again, I think the universe appreciates it. I don't need a pat on the back. It just, it when that energy happens and all the parts are fun, good family activity.
Yeah,
Hats off to you.
that's well, and to you, of course. And tell me a little bit about that. I mean, your philosophy in coaching, and because this is something that I also try to tell people too is, you know, once you've got in the South, we love hunting, and oftentimes hunting is best with a guide, and not for any other reason that the guide knows a lot more than you know, right? Has a lot more access than you have, etc. And so, what we've learned over time with skiing with Troy is it's not just the lesson that we get, but it's the guide that we get. So, talk to me about that philosophy a little bit, where it's not always teaching mode, right? It's not like you always have to be there to fix this and fix that.
Well, just like there's a certain ideal terrain that someone's going to learn best on, where they're challenged enough, but they're not redlining. So they go into, really get into almost a traumatic mindset. Then they take two steps backwards. But I've found that when people have a perceived limit that they're up against, whether it's emotional, intellectual, or physical, that's precisely when all those, that self-negotiation or self-rationalization comes out. Oh, I don't really need to do this. And, so I try and be really sensitive, even with children, and for me, I'm fully capable of being as judgmental as the next person. But when I get in a lesson and I'm doing it in the zone, as I like to say, when I'm really have that awareness of all the moving parts at the same time, I get pretty sensitive to those little cues, and they're not always verbal. Little cues, like the way they move, is what my language that I speak. I watch the way they move, as you alluded to, and come up with a solution. And I'm just trying to create the best next environment for them to experience. Because words are great in a textbook, but skiing and like business is an actual verb, not a noun. It's a happening, and it evolves and really dynamically sometimes, as the weather does.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, that's something that you can't control, right? It's something you have to deal with every day. And I mean, that's a lot of what I'm talking to my team constantly about is, if you want to be stressed about something that you can go put your hands on and you can fix it, I'm fine with that, right? Because you can channel that stress into positive energy. Don't stress out about something that you can't control though, right? So you can't control algorithms, and you can't control a client's mood, and you can't control something breaking that you had no insight into. But there's a lot of things that you can control, and when you focus your efforts and your energy into those things, you find your days are a lot more productive, or that your ski trips are a lot more fun.
I Yeah, I'm drawing, and I have drawn so many parallels between, I did my research on my host as well, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. You need to empower people to have those solutions and solving, because skiing is a very real time. You can't just figure it out after the fact. And what a powerful tool for kids and adults. Like, for the kids, they're like, wait, I have this car, I can drive it, and you're letting me use the gas pedal and the brake pedal, and I'm out here in this wide open environment. And that's a pretty new feeling for a young person. And for adults, because of the risk factor I discussed, you get a lot of type A Wall Street cowboys who find it incredibly therapeutic to be out there, because you really can't think about the future or the past. There's an immediate thing that needs to be done. And maybe we don't live in that part of our minds enough anymore, but um, as physically exerting as it can be, if you do it wrong, um, they really do enjoy the feeling afterwards, because it is
Oh,
a true vacation of the mind when you're engaged in an activity that demands all of you. And if I were working, I guess I am working for you, I'm on your team. I'm a subcontractor, and I get to teach probably the most important thing you have, which is your family. Thank you. um, you let me do my thing, and not all people are like that I encounter.
well, and vice versa. Not not everybody I encounter I trust enough to let them do their thing, and especially with my kids.
Mhm.
But when I'm building that team of people, whether it be subcontractors or people in my life that we just let into our inner circle, I'm looking for very specific things. I'm curious, before I talk about what I look for, because I'm sure there's a lot of the same things when you're building your team. What are you looking for? I know that the best skier is not always the most talented skier.
That's right. And talent plus hard work equals outcomes, and even that's no guarantee, because the world we live in isn't predictable, thank goodness, right? um, in my realm, in skiing, and you can decide whether it applies to business, but um, by definition, I can't do it for them. And I will say this, like, I shine the light on this path that I've traveled obviously many times before. You have to walk it, literally. You are moving on this thing, and this hand holding. Well, you've seen me hold their hand from time to time, but you know, that is a skill that can be learned. But some people come to me already understanding that, and they are willing to take those leaps of faith once that trust relationship is built. And it's hard to answer a question without saying first, um, we have to have a relationship before I can decide whether we are going to work together. Or it's I don't know that leaders exist necessarily in isolation. It could be in the context of the business or the culture where they really find their best self.
Yeah, and I mean that's when you talk about finding your best self. I mean that has always been my goal, is to find the greatest of that person and not necessarily the greatest person. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes when I'm hiring somebody, the person that I hire is not always the person with the most experience or the most talent. It's the person that really wants to be here, right? They want to work for us. They want to be a part of what we're doing. They've got a good baseline to work with, but they want to learn. But their antennae are always up. They're sponges, right? They're the type of people that are up for any type of challenge. That's the person that I want on my team, because it's oftentimes that's the person who ends up being the greatest piece of your culture. Whereas sometimes when you pick that other person that can go faster than everybody or can do things better than everybody, they end up breaking their leg before this big ski competition, right? Or they you know they ultimately are not, they're better in when it's all on themselves and not as great as member on the team. And so that's how I am. I've always noticed that I'm a much better leader at the top of the team than I am as a member of the team throughout my history. That's the way that's kind of things have led, is that I'm not
Mhm.
as comfortable if I'm not empowered to make the decisions that I think are the best for the team.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the things that I notice when I look for people to bring onto my team, are people who have kind of learned from where they've been in the past, understand where they fit in to what you're trying to do, and are working every day towards that common goal.
Amen, brother. Um, I tell you what I when I was hiring, when I was the director of several race programs, obviously I have people who want to be hired as staff coaches, and I had my share of parents and young people who had just gotten out of NCAA racing, and other people who would come up through that very same team and wanted to give back to it. And a really big telltale for me was, once we dealt with the formalities and started conversing, and rarely did I have formal interview processes. I received the resumes, I processed them all, but I was very much a gut hirer. And one of the questions would be, well, where do you see yourself coaching in this organization? If they had a lot of resume items and they skied at a high level or raced at a high level, they'd say they want to be with the best racers, right? And then other people would say they just want to help where they can, for the betterment of the organization. And biggest thing I look for is, you can just tell if they connect with people and with kids, whether they do it because it's a job or they genuinely enjoy building those relationships. And these are trust relationships. Remember, these are fairly sacred, because, even beyond just a beginner lesson with a family, we're asking these 13 through 18-year-olds to go 60 to 80 miles an hour on skis where grave harm could happen. So it really burns out a lot of impurities in the culture. Because I think the best coaches should be with the younger beginners who haven't gotten their fame and glory yet. Once you're dealing with a professional athlete, they know what they're doing, and your job is more manager than anything else. But man, teaching beginners, which I never thought I would enjoy, coming when I first came off the World Cup thinking I knew everything about everything. As soon as I taught a couple lessons, I'm like, man, I know nothing. I have a whole different realm of mastery to start over again. And that actually made me happy, because, I didn't want to be, okay, I'm done with ski racing. Turns out I'll never be done. There's always another hill to climb. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah, your arc as a professional athlete into like a world-class ski instructor, in my opinion, is just one of the coolest, because not a lot of people can do that, right? Not a lot of people have the ability to take the talent that they have themselves and harvest it into others. And I think that's just a really incredible talent that you have. And obviously, when you talk about coaching world-class athletes, a lot of times you're not coaching, you're managing them. I mean, talk about that. Talk about how your experience as a top athlete is able to meld into that management position.
Well, the devil's in the details, right? Just like when we're learning to walk, our corrections to stay balanced are, gross and not on time. When you get to that higher level, little tiny things make a difference in the outcome, where there's, using skiing directly as a metaphor, the faster you go, the slower you move, and the more molecular your corrections are. So your awareness has to be at that level. And one of the problems with growing into that level of ability is you become so aware of every little thing that it can be distracting, and you can get right in your head again. So all throughout, I think with your lesson from day one, I talk about how natural and easy it is and how what you already do well will apply to what we're going to learn how to do well, just standing with good posture while you're moving, which is very counterintuitive at first to a lot of people. But I've been using this expression a lot this year, and I know I haven't talked about leadership for me, but this is my job as a leader, is to connect people with this sort of thing, that they may not be aware just how deep it goes, and how difficult it can be at first, and how they're already built to master these sorts of things with the correct experience. But I say that fear of falling that we all have when we're learning, and I still have if I get to my own limit, that same feeling physically is replaced with the love of flying. Like that's when I can see the kids' light bulbs go off, when they're like, oh, this is wow, and then we're cooking with gas, as my grandfather used to say,
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's hands off and share the environment.
Yeah. How do you keep people, especially like your team, like, after a tough fall, how do you stay motivated, like to get back up on the horse mentality? I mean, how do you keep your best going when
That's a
things
tough
aren't
one.
always going their way?
First thing is, try never to put them in a situation where that kind of thing can happen. But the nature of what we do in business is, we can't control every outcome. I personally I'm a recovering control freak as well as a lot of other things, but you have to stand there, and it's not enough if I know they're prepared. I need them to know they're prepared, because when they're standing there facing that moment of truth, like we all have when the lights come up or the curtains come up, or you're standing there and it's just you in the course and no one else, can you sit there and breathe and say, the skills I have will come out when they need to come out? And even though I can't really predict how exactly it's going to go, I've got what it takes to navigate this and see it through. And a lot of the time I spent building people I'm leading, their confidence, is finding really creative ways to convince them that they do have it, because perception being reality, if they have it in my mind, but they don't believe it in their heart, that's what I'm working with. It's not enough for me to say, you can do this. I need them to look at me in the eye and I can tell they're ready. And they fail, make sure the failures are teaching moments, because skiing is something you fail at every day to get better.
I think that's so important, is knowing where the teaching moments lie, because you could harp on every mistake, right? If you wanted to, right? Like if you come up to me and you say, Alex, you got to keep your head centered. And then I do it for a few turns and I go out and then I forget about it.
Right.
I mean, you have to make that decision. Like, am I going to go tell him something I just told him 5 minutes ago, or am I going to let him fall a couple times and come back and be like, why am I not getting this right? And be like, remember, I told you to keep your head straight. You're not doing that. So, I mean, I'm using that right as an example, but that's how I feel that same way with my team. And I'm looking for those teaching moments to where it comes back to me oftentimes, where a client might say, I had a conversation with a team member the other day and they said this, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they said that. That's a teaching moment. And then I can let that client know that too. Like, listen, we missed the mark, but this is not our culture. This is not who we are. You know our hearts. You know that we can do much better than that. And we have done better for you in the past. We will do better for you in the future. In this moment, I need to go back to my team and use this as a teaching moment. And we can't get better if we don't fail. And so I need these times, not only where we fail, but where you let me know that we've missed the mark so that I can come back and make the team better and make the team stronger. And I feel like it's the
Mhm.
same way in skiing too.
Yeah,
You
I
need those. Yeah.
well, I mean, it's one big huge analogy for me to because I've been a real estate developer. I was an attorney for 10 years. And for me, I never felt like I was bouncing around careers. It was just like, ooh, that looks interesting. Let's try that for a while. And, um, and I always feel like I've never really left a profession so much as it's evolved into something else. But in your realm, I guess the question is, you know, there are times where the consequences of failure are higher, right? I try and set up the laboratory type environment where we can practice and then, ramp up the reality of it, and, so that they progressively respond to the resistance until they are ready, or even take them beyond what they'll find in the field, so they know they're absolutely prepared. And I think that's no different in the leadership context with any organization. Um, and I pay people with the reward of fun or self-accomplishment. I don't pay them money. I guess the coin I use is different. What motivates them, like finding what motivates a person isn't always the money as well. It's that sense of self-determination, which ultimately makes people happy. I know it makes me happy.
Right. Right. How does that wrap around your teaching philosophy?
Well, um, again, it's so easy for me because they again, the family lesson is the tricky one because everyone has a different cognitive style, a different learning rate, and a different starting ability. And then interpersonal relationships that I'm just getting to know. And in business, everyone has their inside agenda, not good or bad, but again, thoughts which are their own may not, as a percentage, all be aligned towards that common goal, that culture. And I define culture as all the things you say and do when no one's watching, because when we're being measured or watched, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's like what really goes on, that's the energy and power of an organization. So I think with experience, Alex, you learn to pick up those clues. And again, it's art and science. I'm never quite sure if what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing, but I've learned to trust my instincts about people, what they're ready for next, because I could probably get fired if I wasn't good at that, taking places they don't belong.
So who is skiing? Who should be skiing? I mean, who should try skiing
Everybody,
if they've never done it before?
everybody. Um,
Why is that?
well, like everyone else, there's a common misperception that it's difficult. Um, beginner lessons in particular are very inexpensive. They do want to indoctrinate the next generation. So they make kids lessons very relatively affordable. But especially for young people or anyone, being able to teach that skill of decision making, because it's consequential, and not just in theory or out of a textbook like we learn in kindergarten and grammar school. There's a do, there's a feedback, and then there's a change behavior. In skiing, it's immediate and constant, and ultimately pretty rapid as far as growing that part of the brain, because we are forced to be in the moment. For kids, it's just play, right? They learn through play. And for adults, it is a good time to reflect and balance out all those linear moments that we have in modern society. And I think that's good for anyone. I tell people it is cheaper than therapy at the end of the day, you know. But just learning to accomplish something that is perceived as difficult, that can change anyone's self-esteem for the better. And I think that we always need more of that. So I'm an evangelist, as I've said to you before. I'm just spreading the word, the great word.
Well, and for me, it's all those things, and the fact that you get to do it in the most beautiful, serene setting that
Yeah.
God has, I mean, given us. I love the ocean, and I love lakes, and I love nature, but there's literally nothing in the world like sitting, getting off a chairlift at the top of a
Mm.
mountain and sitting down, strapping your skis or strapping your snowboard on and looking down and being like, I mean, holy shit, there's only one way down, like this is about to happen right now. And you can, I mean, it's just an incredible freeing feeling that I think everybody should get the chance to enjoy. And I wouldn't recommend going to the top unless you started at the bottom and figured
Oh,
it out first. So
a lot of people do that, to each his own. That's why we have doctors too. But the it's just gratitude, Alex. Like that, I try to never lose that. Like you, I think we looked at each other a couple times and we're just like, damn, this is really something. And there's these moments where I'm looking at you, looking at your family, and your heart is full and in that place, and that makes me happy. And that, when I find that when I was ski racing, pretty self-absorbed, my career, that young man phase of my life. And it turns out I get a lot of happiness from being in service, which, that is when I'm at my best, I think, when I'm doing a demonstration for a child, when it really matters. I'm at my worst probably when I'm trying to do a ski race for my own to self. I'm not nearly as good as when I'm doing it for someone else. Turns out. Who would have thought it?
who'd have thunk it, huh? Well, Troy, this has been awesome. I really, really enjoy all the time that we've ever gotten together. And I thought it was just, you were the perfect person to bring on for my audience. I get a lot of business leaders, who listen to the show, and people who, really sometimes need to get out of their own head. And I think that's one of the things that you are really awesome at, which is just helping people kind of get out of their own head and just figuring out what are those little small details that you can change. And it could be in your life, or it could be on the ski slopes, to really open up everything for you, right? To change from you going from snow plowing to going 50 miles an hour down the mountain. So I think this was great. I always like to end the show with something a little bit fun. I call it three things. It really helps me get to know people better and help them think. So here's the way it works. I'm going to give you three things, and you're going to have to choose one. You're going to have to discard one, and you're going to have to give one away. I know the giving away will be easy for you. The discarding is always the tough one for me. But we're really going to find out about you when we figure out which one you're going to keep. So here's the three things. You ready, Troy? You get to keep one, discard one,
All right.
and give one away. You got $1 million, time travel, so you could go back to your 19-year-old self and win the World Cup, or 100 acres in Summit County. What are you
Okay.
doing?
All right. I'm gonna discard the time travel. I don't think anyone needs that. And I do that in my own head every day. Like I'm always going back and reinterpreting my own history, and making it
Yeah.
positive. So
Yeah.
I would give away the $1 million, probably to new ski instructors who need it. It's so hard to start out in this business. And I would definitely keep the 100 acres in Summit County, if there are even 100 acres in Summit County, which is, worth a lot more than $1 million, as you know. It's probably worth 100 million. And I'd build some kind of sports academy, learning business hybrid. I don't know. I'll get together with you on the business plan. But can you imagine?
Yes. Save me 10 acres. Save me 10 of the 100.
Yeah.
I'll be
No
good. I'll
kidding,
be
right?
there.
But that's probably what I'd go for. Even though time traveling is very tempting, I could fantasize about that one a lot. It's better to leave that wand, break that one, and throw it over the bridge. I have no regrets.
That's it. That's actually exactly how I thought it would go. Who could pass up 100 acres in Summit County? In closing, I want to thank you, Troy, for coming on the show. This has been incredible. You can find Troy on Instagram at Troy Watts. That's WATTS and add an S at the end for speed. So that's at Troy Watts, WATTS. And Troy, how else can people get a hold of you if they want to come learn to ski from the greatest ski instructor in the
Oh
world?
man, look me up on Facebook. That has all my wife and I love to take pictures, so you can get a flavor of what we're like, because I think we share all our photos as public and the places we've traveled. And, my favorite subject matter is the kids and the people that we work with and catching them in those moments where they are better than themselves. And then, it's so satisfying to get someone who takes a picture I took and it becomes their Facebook profile, that it speaks for them, right? And then you can reach me anyway through Instagram, or I'd love to teach any one of your, sounds like you have a great following and I love your business, and come ski.
Awesome.
I know.
Man. Thanks. Thanks for coming on, Troy. I'm hoping that you get a lot of folks. I know people have already personally reached out to me and asked me about you. And so I thought this was perfect to get you on the podcast, and we will. Yeah, when we post this stuff, we'll try and tag Troy on Facebook and Instagram so you can find them. Of course, just reach out to me if you can't find them. You don't want to miss the next episode of Biz School. I've got an incredible guest coming on. We're going to chat about search engine optimization and conversion. So please subscribe, punch that 5 stars, share this with someone that you know who might find it helpful, and help me grow this thing. That is all for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Troy. Thank you all for joining me. It means a lot. And the rest, as they say, is history.